In this video, I'm going to be sharing how I became a Christian, my experience as a pastor's kid, and how the faith journey is going now. So, subscribe, like, comment, share, do all the things that need to be done, and let's get into the video. Okay, so for context, my dad is a pastor at the Apostolic Church, and I think he was ordained around 2000 2001. I'm not too sure, but it was before I was born. So essentially, I like to joke that I was born into the church, because like naming ceremony, all these child dedication happens in the church. So growing up as a pastor's kid, essentially your life is in the church, if that makes sense. Like your friends are mostly from the church. The people of the church become your family in a strange way, that there was no boundary. So the way our church system was set up, or the house we lived in, it's called a mission house, particularly in Nigeria, is that the house we lived in was right next to the church, which means that people could come in. We always had visitors, like for Christmas, New Year, all that. We always had visitors in our house. If it was a conference or something happening at church, your room was never yours. So that was that. But I never hated the experience, actually. I just didn't like the fact that we would be the first ones to get a church and the last ones to leave. It would be after elders meeting and we'd have to stay with them. But that was normal back then. Well, I'm still a pastor's kid, so it's still normal. But I think personally, when all of that was as I was growing up, I loved Jesus. Let me explain that. So we would have morning devotions like almost every day, and we'd pray at night as well. So that was part of like routine. And we would read, sometimes read from Genesis to Revelation. Well, not consistently, but yes, we'd read that. And I enjoyed it. I enjoyed learning about Jesus. I enjoyed the stories. My dad would ask, like, after we read a chapter, I'd be like, any questions? And I'd raise my hand and I'd be like, I have this question. And he'd be like, any lessons? And, you just get lessons. And even Sunday school, I loved Sunday school. It was always fun learning about this man, Jesus. And, he just seemed like a cool guy this was like until 10. So I just enjoyed learning about Christ. And yeah, so I think in my head, I was saved. Like, I didn't know what it meant to be saved, but I was like, surely that was it. But my mom used to tell me, like, you can't get to heaven on the faith of your parents. Like, you need to make the decision for yourself. So I always knew that I would have to make the decision, but it wasn't a thing of like, oh, I'm going to hell. It was a thing of, okay, eventually at some point I'll make the decision. Because a part of me wanted to postpone the decision, because I also saw Christianity as this like rigid in the sense that like it was, you didn't do the crazy things, you didn't drink, you didn't party, you didn't do all those things. So a part of me wanted to experience that first and then come to Christ. So I wanted the crazy story of I was a drunkard, I was a smoker and everything, and then Jesus found me, and then now I'm radical, I'm an evangelist and all of that. But that's not my story. So yeah, growing up, I think coming to South Africa, the shift happened. So I was around 10 when I came to South Africa, and then I was growing up. So I was in the choir, I was a Sunday school teacher, drama, I was a dramaist. Is that a word? I was in the drama department. I was, sanctuary keeper, like all the things. As a pastor's kid, one thing I know is that there's no role you can't do in the church. I think you sort of get immersed in the church. But I remember was it 2019 or 2018? I watched this poem by Ezekiel Azungu. I will link it down in the description below. But it was called Almost Saved. I remember being convicted by that. Because I don't know what it was. So he was speaking about how, you think you're a Christian, like you do all those things, you go to church and what, but essentially it means that your life isn't consistent with what you profess. So even in high school, I remember that we had my friends and I, we had like this Bible study, and we're not even ordained. We didn't take this. It wasn't like I was studying my Bible every day by myself and then going to others. It was just a thing because we called ourselves Christians. So we thought we could, share the word, and that was good, but it wasn't from a place of like real, genuine faith from God. So yeah, that poem convicted me, and then I think that was the first time where I was like, oh, am I actually saved? So that was a moment. I don't know if that was when I gave my life to Christ. So my experience as a pastor's kid is, and becoming a Christian, is that I don't think there was a moment in time where I said, oh Lord, yes, but I think it was like a constant saying of yes. Like it was constantly me being pursued by God, and then me submit to myself, if that makes sense. So I also remember another event that happened to me where there was a pastor, was it a pastor evangelist, something like that came to our church in Joburg. And I remember the sermon, and he was speaking about like Christ's return, something like that. And I remember being like, my heart was beating because I knew heaven was real, I knew hell was real. And I remember he said, if you want to give your life to Christ, come to the front now. And I went to the front because I was just like, I don't want to go to hell. So that was one of the experiences where I was like, ooh, it's real. But I think over time, it's understanding God, and it's shaped through different experiences. So that was 2019. I think the video with Ezekiel was like 2018 or 2019, I'm not too sure. And then 2020, I think, was another defining moment for me as a Christian. 2020 was the pandemic, and I had a gap year. So I was feeling alone. It wasn't my family, but I was also feeling like, oh, my friends from high school, because I graduated in 2019, my friends from high school have moved on, they're in university, and I'm at home. And I felt very sad and depressed and everything. And so I poured my out to God, and I said, Lord, this is me. So every Sunday, I'd literally connect to an online service, transformation, elevation, like any service that was running. I was like, I'm there, I'm watching all the series, I would take notes. Like my family knew Sunday evening, because their time would be in the morning in USA, and it would be evening for me. So I'd be watching and take notes, and I just thought my heart was given unto the Lord. But now this is something else that, as a PK, I think sometimes we struggle with, is this idea of what's the English, like self-sufficiency, or not self-sufficiency, but where you feel like you're not a sinner. Like I think it's harder to convict or convince a pastor's kid that they're a sinner, because it's like a Pharisee. You think that you are good, you are not the worst of sinners. So because you don't lie, you don't have the opportunity to lie or steal or do all this murder, or like you compare your sins to other people, and you think that you're better than them. So I think I had that problem for a long time, which is why even my coming to faith, I had to be very convicted of my sin and say, oh no, even in those just simple lie, white lie, whatever, it still made me a sinner. And another thing about my experience as a pastor's kid that made me almost not like the people of God, I love them now, but one of the experiences was the judgment. And I think as a pastor's kid, you are under this scrutiny where people almost expect you to be perfect as your father is perfect. Not that your dad is perfect, but there's this like there's a standard they use for pastor's kids that they don't use for their own kids. So for example, if a pastor's kid is running around in the church, like that's a sign that no, you're not disciplined enough. Like it almost always points back to the pastor. I remember, I don't know if I should share the story, but I remember I made a Facebook post like way back 2014 or so, 2015, and it wasn't even something crazy. I just posted, like, I think I posted me with makeup, whatever, with filter. It was UCAM makeup, I even remember. And like I just posted, I thought I looked cute or whatever. I didn't. It was a terrible picture. But like people were just coming for me, and I'm like, I'm just a girl, calm down, what did I do? I didn't understand what was going on. And it always points back to the parents. So that's something else, that judgment, like even little things, people don't understand that you're not born perfect as a pastor's kid. You have to go on this journey yourself. So 2020 become like a serious Christian, if you will. And then 2021 I was supposed to go to uni, and I remember telling a friend of mine, I'm like, what happens if I go wild? That would always be my weird craziest fear. I'm like, what happened? Because I'm leaving province, I'm going from Joburg to Grahamstown, which is an instant Cape. That's a whole nother province. I've never been alone, ever without my parents. I'm only like 17, I think 17, 18, 19, 20, yeah. I'm only 17. So I'm like, I'm scared. I'm like, what happens? It's a new environment. What if they, convert me into becoming a Muslim or atheist or whatever the case might be? So I remember thinking to myself, like, this university is going to be a defining mark of if I'm actually saved. Because I think that's something I've always struggled with. Not so much now, is am I actually saved? So going to uni, I was like, oh Lord, please keep me. If you don't keep me, they will carry me. And something else that I heard about Rose University is like they drink a lot. That time I've never drank alcohol before at that point. And I was like, I was scared. So that's also something else about being a pastor's kid. You're very sheltered. So when you go into the world, you can go into the world for real. So going into uni, glory be to God. I genuinely think that it was God keeping me for himself, where I think in the first on O week, so 2021 was still like COVID-ish, so O week registration wasn't fun. O week is orientation week. So when I was registering and after I'd taken my photo for my student card, I met this man, and it was just God. And so my parents came with me to Grahamstown. So this man, I don't know how the conversation shifted to churches and everything. And then my dad asked him like, oh, okay, other churches? And he was like, no, Grahamstown is a land of churches. And so he sent me this Facebook page of like Christians at Rhodes, and literally connected me to all the churches. And I was like, follow them, you find a church. So after that first week or so, I found a student fellowship, and I literally plugged myself immediately. I was like, I'm not even giving myself chance to be wild. And I literally plugged myself into a church. I plugged myself into a Christian society and everything. So that was that. And since first year, it's just been going to church. And I'm not even trying to, paint the fact that I'm a perfect Christian or anything like that. I'm not. I promise you, it's been a journey. And I think Christianity is a journey of getting to know Christ better. Leaving my parents' home, I didn't leave the shelter because they still pray for me, and I think that's something else that also is always in the back of my mind, is that your parents are praying for you. There's prayer that covers me, prayer that I will never even know, that I know that I can't be wild. My mom always said, remember the daughter of who you are. So there's this, it's been drained into me, like your behavior has to reflect God. Wherever you are, you have to reflect God. So it's been a journey of knowing God personally now, because as a pastor kids, you sort of know all those facts about God. You know how many books are in the Bible, you can do memory verses and all of that because that's how you've grown. But when you now leave your parents' home and you sort of take that journey for yourself, you have to be very intentional. You have to prioritize God. You have to pursue him. So there were weeks in the year where I stopped caring, where it was harder to be a Christian. It was harder to pursue God. But that's the thing, where it's like it always felt that God was always drawing me to himself, where even when I'm far, even when I want to be far, when my feelings don't align with my faith, and I'm like, Lord, I don't want to do it, but God was always pursuing me, from someone's status to, I have a Bible in the corner of my room. Like, there's always something, and just random events that always draw me back to God. And I think even when I fall to sin, it's the key is to not condemn yourself, because I think I fall into this, where I fall into self-condemnation after sin very heavily. Shame is a very big problem, but it's always going back to God and saying, Lord, I'm here, and confessing your sin and pulling yourself back up and allowing the Holy Spirit to transform you. So that's pretty much the end of the video. It's to say that being a pastor kid doesn't make a difference. It's about God. Like, if God calls you to himself, you are going to be called to God, and it's a matter of now also submitting your heart daily, even when you're far. It's like the prodigal son. Even if you leave now, if you're a pastor's kids who have left God for a long time, it's like, the Father's arms are wide open. In the analogy of the prodigal son, I used to feel myself as the elder son, the son who was angry that someone else is coming into the kingdom. It's like, no, but I wanted the crazy story. The prodigal son story is nicer than the elder son who is literally in the faith. But even the elder son had problems to see that I'm not perfect. There's that reminding myself that just because I'm a Christian doesn't mean I'm better than anyone. So yeah, the journey is literally coming to God daily and submitting myself and saying, Lord, I need you every day. I need you when I sin, I need you when I don't. Not that I could ever be without sin. But yeah, that's the video, that's the journey, that's the experience. So if at any point you can relate, if there's anything I said that you felt like, oh yeah, that's cool, that's interesting, I need to know that, you can just comment down below, and then we'll continue the conversation there. So the next video that you can watch is the Get to Know Me video, where I share a bit more about myself, or the next video that will be coming out soon. Thank you so much for watching, and see you next time. Bye.